Hi guys, Andy here. I wanted to talk about an issue I'm having with a 5.4 Triton motor. One of my favorite motors to work on here, right? Anyway, I'll just tell you the story about the truck. So I got a 2007 F150 here, King Ranch. I always wanted a King Ranch. I've done quite a few of these 5.4 motors as far as timing jobs, swapping them, swapping out the transmissions, just doing that kind of stuff for these trucks. It's probably done 7 or 8 of them now. And I ran into something in this '07 that I haven't ran into before. And I normally get a lot of information from the Ford Make Me Loco channel. It's an amazing channel. He talks about this kind of stuff. I learned a lot from him. And I'm not a professional mechanic, but I do a lot in my garage on the weekends. And anyway, I bought this '07 from a friend, and I always wanted a King Ranch, and it had about 150,000 miles on it. He took it to the dealership for a ticking or knocking noise when he slowed down. Ended up being a cam phaser. So they quoted him like $5,000 for a timing job and new phasers, and he didn't want to put that kind of money into it. So I bought the truck from him. I don't know, $2,500. I drove it home. I was pretty happy. I wanted this to be my daily driver, so instead of just doing a timing job, I decided I pulled the motor. I did head gaskets, oil pump, timing job. I did the works to it, except for pulling the crank. All OEM stuff, Melling high volume oil pump, just the normal. If you're into Triton motors, you've been through all this stuff. Anyway, so I rebuild the whole motor. I put it back in the truck and go to start it. Starts right up, runs great for about 5 minutes, and then it stalls and won't start again. And so I let it all cool down, give it a few hours, starts up, runs great again for 5 minutes, then stalls, and then won't start again. Like, what in the heck is going on? So I start looking at things, and when it's stalling, I've got my scanner hooked up, and I'm looking at the error and the advancement and the timing. And what's happening is it's advancing when you rev it up a little. The timing is advancing to 60 degrees, and then it's staying there, and it's not reverting back, which is it's a cam phaser issue. So what the heck? So I'm like, man, I just put brand new Ford OEM cam phasers in here. What is going on? So I had to pull in I pulled the tappet covers off. I cheese wedge it, pop the cam phasers out, and I put in some of the blocks. I tore the cam phasers apart, put it in the blocks for the cam phaser delete kit. And I basically deleting the phasers from actually moving. Pop it back on there, put the valve covers back on, start it up, runs great. After 5 minutes, it stalls, and it's not advancing the cam phasers. So it's like, what the heck's going on? And when it's stalling, I'm noticing the only error it's giving me is it says low oil pressure. And it's like, it can't have low oil pressure. I just did all this work to it. I've done this multiple times and had success with these engines. So I'm at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do, so I pulled the motor again. Okay, so here it is. Here's the motor on my stand. I've got it half tore apart. And and one thing I noticed when it was stalling is that it was giving me the oil pressure light, but when it was running, I noticed that my harmonic balancer was wobbling with the engine just a little bit. I thought, man, that was really weird. I do not remember that thing wobbling when first time I tore the motor apart. So in my head, I'm thinking, man, I got low oil pressure. Oh, one other thing, I did hook an oil gauge up to it. So oil pressure gauge, you can see right here on the bottom of the block. I put a little T in there. Yep, there we go. Put a little T in there and then hooked the little oil pressure gauge up. So I was able to actually see the oil pressure. And what was happening is the oil pressure, when I first started, it would be at 25 PSI. When I'd rev the engine, it'd go up to 50 PSI really good. And after a couple minutes, that oil pressure would go down to to 10 and then 5 and then 0, and that's when it stalled. So I had no oil pressure, and that's why the engine was stalling. And so then I decided to pull the engine out, open it back up, and what I found was the pickup tube. So this is the oil pickup tube. It mounts right down here. Well, this pickup tube, it was full of crap. Little plastic pieces, all kinds of crap in there. And I'd never had anything like this. I do a pretty good job cleaning these engines when I put them back together. And the only thing I could think is that on this engine, this is a Melling high volume oil pump. So this is a 360, and I normally put a 340 in, but this engine, it was going to be my daily driver, and I wanted to make sure I took care of it really well. So I put the 360 high volume oil pump in there, and I think I read on it that said they're supposed to be the same pressure either way. Doesn't matter. I put a 360 in, and the only thing I could think of is that high pressure oil pump, that as it started pumping through the system with the amount of pressure it was giving it was just cleaning the system out. All that stuff went down in the oil pan, and it was sucking so much up that it sucked up and it got that screen all clogged. So all of my oil pressure issues, I believe, were from this thing being like that. Well, now that I got the whole thing apart anyway, I went ahead and bought a crank kit. I'm going to go ahead and replace the crank in this thing just with the low oil pressure issues. I thought that it was caused from maybe my crank going bad. I did check the thrust bearings on here. I had about 12 thousandths of movement when I checked it with a pry bar and had an indicator on there. So that was within spec, but I thought, what the heck? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and replace this crank. I'm gonna put this thing all back together, all cleaned and nice. And then, and then the harmonic balancer wobble. See if I can get one thing that I noticed on here. So I think that when I was putting this in, that I had this flex plate here. I think I had it wedged in there, and I bumped it or something, because as I turn this motor over now, you probably can't see it in the video. If you get an end view, you can almost see it a little bit. But that flex plate is not straight. It's got a little wobble to it. And I think that's what was causing my harmonic balancer to wobble. So I was chasing after two different issues. I thought the wobble might have been something to do with the crank, but anyway, that's I think the issue. So if you're rebuilding one of these things and you have a oil pressure issue, I would highly recommend, for one, hooking up some kind of oil pressure gauge on here so you can tee off this spot. Or if you come to the back of the heads, it's a little tougher to do, but on the back of the heads here, on both of them, you've got a little set screw plug in here, one here and one down here. And you can plug into there and catch it on either side of the head, get the oil pressure, but put some kind of oil pressure gauge on these things so you can actually see the real oil pressure, not just the stupid Ford dummy light, which I believe triggers it once it gets below 7 PSI that it kicks on. So do that, and then if you think you're having some kind of oil pressure issues, before you're like me and you pull the whole motor and tear it all apart, maybe just drop the oil pan and check out the screen on this thing and see if it's clogged. So, especially if you knew you had some kind of timing issues, because a lot of the crap that I found in there were little plastic pieces. And when I did tear this apart the first time, one of my timing guides here was broken. I thought I had it cleaned out really well, but there must have been stuff hiding inside that engine that didn't get blasted out until I put the high volume oil pump on. Okay, so anyway, I think I've got this engine all cleaned out really good. I'm not gonna trust myself again. So I'm gonna do another project, which I'll post this all in another video. This will be really cool. So what I have here is another 07 F150 that I have the entire front end basically cut off of this thing. This is a truck I bought for $1,000 that was in an accident, and it had a good motor and good transmission and good everything else in it, but it was totaled in an accident. And I had another F150 outside that needed a motor. So I went ahead and I bought this thing, brought it home, took the motor out of it, took the transmission out of it, and to do it, I cut off this whole front end because it was already smashed. And now I got another truck, good running truck with a motor and tranny in it already going down the road. And I had this thing sitting outside, and I was kind of using it as my parts vehicle. But I thought, you know what would be really great is if I had a way of taking a 5.4 Triton motor that I just rebuilt on a stand, instead of going through all the work to drop it back in here, I can easily drop it in there and test it. So this is basically a mobile test stand now for 5.4 Triton. So like this, I thought it was an amazing idea. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rebuild this motor, and then I'm gonna go ahead and set it in here. I'm gonna time myself. I think from the time that I take it off this engine stand and set it in this truck, throw the wire harness on, hook up the wires. I even took off an old transmission that I had that was junk. I cut the bell housing. So I'm just gonna attach this bell housing back to the back of the motor just so I can bolt the starter up without having to do anything else. I've got the original air conditioner here, so I'll hook that up just for the pulley sake. Same with the power steering. I'll be able to have this thing up and running, I think, within a couple hours. And within a couple hours, I've got this really cool mobile test stand. I'm gonna run this engine. If it runs good, I'll go ahead and I'll run it. If I get good oil pressure and it runs good, I know it's fixed, then I'll pull it back out of here, pull that pan off again, check that screen, make sure everything looks good. If it does, then I'll go through the work of putting it back in the truck, which isn't a terrible job. It's you know, you can do it all in one day. It is kind of a pain in the butt to get everything aligned. I did get a new flex plate for it that I'm gonna put on. I'm doing the crank kit now. I bought a new harmonic balancer. I mean, basically when I'm done, this engine's gonna be just about brand new. The truck's only got 150,000 miles on it. It's a King Ranch, which I've always wanted, just the interior and everything. So I'm hoping I got a really good daily driver, that I got hundreds of thousands of miles left on it to run, and the engine's basically all brand new. So anyway, that's my story. That's what I'm doing. I'm gonna post this video, and then I'll get some more videos posted of some of the work I'm doing to the engine, and just kind of a cool little project. But anyway, that's all I got. So thanks a lot. We'll see you in a bit. All right, bye.